Greetings, citizens of Earth. My people have developed technologies which allow us to throw off our physical forms and travel great distances in the blink of an eye. We are in dialogue with your leaders to help the human race survive its infancy, for we believe in you. We are helping your scientists find cures for diseases which afflict your bodies, and helping you to preserve your planet's most precious resources. Many among us wage peace, and one day, with our help, war may be a thing of the past. Our army is 1 billion strong and growing. We are the people of the Internet, and together, we are shaping the future of humankind.
There were giants in the earth in those days, and when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children, the same became mighty men, which were of old men of renown.
September 1994, over 60 children from this school in the suburbs of Harare, Zimbabwe, witnessed several objects landing and two beings coming out. Just over 2 months later, John and Dominique came to the scene to work with the children, their parents, and the teachers still suffering from shock. John, who essentially specialized in child psychiatry, devoted a great deal of time to interviewing the children.
Something scared you, is that right?
Yes.
What scared you?
The noise.
What noise?
The noise that we heard in the air.
You heard a noise in the
Yes.
air? What was it like? Like a roar or a buzz or a hum, or what kind of a noise?
It was like someone was blowing a flute. It was scary myself.
It was scary because you saw something yourself?
Yes. I saw a little object hovering. It was quite big actually, and then there was little ones all around it. We saw something silver, and then we quickly ran to the logs, and we saw a silver thing, and we saw a man standing next to it.
What did it feel like when he was looking at you?
I felt scared.
It felt scared? What was scary about it?
Well, I felt scared because I've never seen such a person like that before.
Did you see the eyes? What did they look like?
They were going like that.
Where was the pointy part? Was the pointy part in here, or was the pointy part out there? Up there. And what was the feeling when you looked at the eyes?
It was scary.
And what scary? Why? What made it scary?
The eyes looked evil.
Evil. And what was evil about them? Say what you mean by evil.
It looked evil because it was just staring at me.
With what? Staring at you as if what? As if to do what?
As if it wanted to come and take us.
As if it wanted to come and take you. That was the feeling you got? That it wanted you to go with it? Did you feel like you wanted to go with it? No. Did you feel, what was the effect on you when you felt it wanted to have you go with it?
I just walked away and I started crying.
Both of them were running. One was running in the trees, and the other one was running across the ship, because there were also trees here.
The eyes were like more pointed as they came in toward the center of the head, is that?
No, more circular. And this was all black in here.
All black. Now you've made pupils. Did they actually have pupils, or
Yes,
was
the
it
pupils
solid
were
black?
white.
What?
The pupils were white like
And you
that.
saw white in the center?
Yes, like that.
Was he near the silver object, or was he far from
No,
it?
on top.
On top of the silver object. Okay. And did you look at him?
Yes.
Did he look at you?
Yes, then he gave me the creeps, then I stopped
Gave you
looking at
the creeps. Actually, in your drawing, you showed him standing up, didn't you?
Yes, I had to draw him standing up because I couldn't draw him sitting. What I thought was maybe the world's going to end. Maybe they're telling us the world's going to end.
Why do you think they might want us to be scared?
Because because we don't look after the planet the area properly.
And is this an idea that you have had before, that we don't look after the planet properly in the air, or did this idea come to you when you had this experience?
When I had this experience.
And how did that idea come to you from this experience? This is a little hard, but try to be with me here, okay? How did this idea come to you when you had this experience?
I just felt all horrible inside.
You felt horrible. At what point did you feel that? When you saw the craft, or when you got home at night? Or
When I got home.
You had that horrible feeling when you got home?
Yes.
And say more about that horrible feeling, Lisa. What was it like?
It was like in the world, all the trees will just go down and there will be no air and people will be dying.
Mm-hmm. And those thoughts came to you, had you had those thoughts before this experience?
No.
No. And how did those thoughts come to you? Did they come to you from the craft or from...
From the man.
The man. And the man, did the man say those things to you? How did he get that across to you?
Well, he never said anything. It's just that the face is the eyes.
What was the sense you got from those eyes?
He was interested.
Congressman Kucinich, I want to move to a different area because this is a serious question. The godmother of your daughter, Shirley MacLaine, writes in her new book that you cited a UFO over her home in Washington State, that you found the encounter extremely moving, that it was a triangular craft, silent and hovering, that if you felt a connection to your heart and heard directions in your mind. Now, did you see a UFO?
I did, and the rest of the account, it was unidentified flying object, okay? It's like, it's unidentified. I saw something. Now, to answer your question, I'm moving and I'm also going to move my campaign office to Roswell, New Mexico, and another one in Exeter, New Hampshire, okay? And also, you have to keep in mind that Jimmy Carter saw a UFO, and also that more people in this country have seen UFOs and I think approve of George Bush's presidency.
Actually,
and so, wait, we're just getting started here.
No, I mean, we have about 14% of Americans say they have seen UFOs. I'm going to move.
What was the percentage?
14%.
What was that percentage?
14.
Thank you.
I want to see. I'm going to ask Senator Obama a question in the same line. The 3 astronauts of Apollo 11 who went to the moon back in 1969 all said that they believe there is life beyond Earth. Do you agree?
You know, I don't know, and I don't presume to know. What I know is there is life here on Earth, and that we're not attending to life here on Earth. We're not taking care of kids who are alive and unfortunately are not getting health care. We're not taking care of senior citizens who are alive and are seeing their heating prices go up. So as president, those are the people I will be attending to first. There may be some other folks on their way.
Before Gordon Cooper entered the space program, he had his own encounter with a different type of space traveler. While flying over Central Europe, his fighter squadron came upon a formation of UFOs.
There were a number of extraterrestrial vehicles out there cruising around, flying the same kind of formation we fly in our fighters. They didn't have wings, they were saucer-shaped, and we never could get as high or as fast as they were, so to really positively identify them, but they were metallic looking and saucer in shape. And they could do a few maneuvers that we couldn't do in the airplane, like just horizontally displace themselves rapidly. Be flying along, just move over rapidly.
Gordon Cooper's UFO sighting wasn't his only close encounter. In 1958, he was working as a project manager at Edwards Air Force Base in California.
I had a film crew working for me on a project I was doing to put a precision landing system in on the edge of the dry lake bed. And they were filming the various stages of the installation. And a small saucer apparently flew overhead and put down some landing gear and landed out on the dry lake bed, only about 50 yards out. And these were old pro cameramen who were used to flying in all kinds of vehicles to take all kinds of pictures. And so they picked up their cameras and started over toward it, and going to get some close-ups. And with that, it lifted up, put the gear back in, and at a very high rate of speed disappeared. So they came in to tell me what happened. I told them to get over to the lab and develop the film immediately. And I would go and look in the book, regulation book, and see what you're supposed to do, who you have to call to report these kind of incidents, which I did. And by the time they got back with the film, there was a higher and higher and higher ranked man preceding the last one assuring me that I had to get those negatives into a pouch and that they had made arrangements already to get our commanding general's airplane reserved and take the films to Washington.
In an effort to organize open investigations of UFO sightings, Gordon Cooper wrote a letter to the United Nations in 1976, appealing for assistance. His letter stated these are extraterrestrial vehicles visiting from other planets.
And it was presented to the council and certainly made a lot of people aware of a number of things that perhaps they had not been aware of before, so maybe it opened a few eyes.
Today, at age 76, Gordon Cooper reflects upon his experiences.
This universe is limitless and tremendous big universe, and we're kind of vain to think that we're the only ones that exist here.
Now, here in Britain, details of hundreds of UFO sightings have been released, unidentified flying objects. The Ministry of Defence files, which contain photos, letters and drawings of apparent close encounters over the last 20 years, have now been declassified.
Look closely at this image of the night sky above Boston in Lincolnshire, and particularly at the speck of bright light to the top right of the photo. The picture of the strange object was taken by a police officer. Until now, it's been held in MOD files, marked classified. Also in the once top-secret files, a report that a triangular UFO was seen hovering near former Home Secretary Michael Howard's house in Folkestone. The records reveal a sighting here in Highbury in North London 16 years ago. A man said that he saw a globe-like, planet-like object in the sky. It was glowing and there were red flashing lights, apparently. Haven't caught sight of it today, though. Here's an image of a UFO seen hovering over Watford, drawn by the man who says he saw it. It looks rather like a jellyfish. This unidentified flying object, apparently seen in Malmesbury, looks more like a traditional flying saucer, and a bit like this one, reportedly seen in Llandudno. So do UFOs really exist?
I don't really believe in UFOs.
Quite categorically, I believe they exist. The world is forever changing and growing, so yes, I do.
One of the best known and most controversial cases took place near Snowflake, Arizona on November 5th, 1975, at a time when there were few reported cases of alien abduction. The everyday life of logger Travis Walton would never be the same. This is his story.
Well, this was a long, hard day. We had just finished work. I was tired, but I was looking forward to a long drive home.
The crew had worked until after sunset, hoping to complete the logging contract for crew boss Mike Rogers before the first snowfall. Travis, Mike, and 5 other loggers squeezed into a pickup truck. They were driving back to town when, they say, something very strange happened.
Just as soon as we got around the trees that were between us and it, we saw it hovering just less than 100 feet away, and wow, it was just like, you know, we come around these trees and wham, it's just the sight of this thing was just so intense.
Nobody else got out of the truck, just him. I wasn't about to get out.
At first I was, you know, kind of showing off for them, thinking that this thing was just going to take off before I got up close to it. But the closer I got, the more I realized it wasn't going anywhere, and I was starting to have second thoughts.
Well, I yelled at him to get the hell back from there, you know. What are you doing? You know, it looked dangerous.
I'd already decided I needed to make a run for it. I raised up and turned to go, and something hit me.
Something shot out of the bottom of this thing, and it hit him in the head and chest area. It was a beam that came down, but it created like an explosion of some kind, like an explosion of light.
I didn't know what happened after that. I was just completely out.
His companions panicked and fled, leaving Travis motionless on the ground. When they returned a few minutes later, the alien spacecraft had disappeared. They began to look for Travis.
All these tough logger guys, you know, at least we think we are, and when we get out of the truck, we meet in a huddle right in the headlights of the truck, and we start walking around looking for Travis, all in this little tight huddle, just scared to death. I was nauseated. I was so scared.
Travis was nowhere to be found. The next day, Their story was all over the news. The townspeople mounted an extensive search of the grounds and combed through vast tracts of the forest for clues. When the search failed to uncover any trace of Travis, Sheriff Marlon Gillespie suspected foul play.
I was probably leaning more towards a crime of violence of some sort. I felt that eventually one of them would spill the beans and tell us what had happened.
Local gossip pointed the finger at Mike Rogers and the crew members. To clear their names, they agreed to take polygraph tests. 5 of the 6 men passed. The test on the 6th man proved inconclusive. 5 days after his disappearance, Travis says that he awoke on the side of the road a few miles from where he vanished. He staggered to a phone booth and called home.
And then when I found out how long I'd been gone, I was so blown away by that I was kind of like catatonic for a while.
The United Nations, right? A place where nations come together and have discussions and unite, and they unite under the United Nations. They have now appointed an Earth contact for aliens.
Just in case, right? Just in case we are visited by somebody from another planet or galaxy.
Right.
I love it. Finally, the United Nations is being proactive.
Right,
okay, they're
right.
doing something to prepare because they say they need a plan in place in the event that someone tries to make contact from another world.
But hold on.
What?
When you put it that way, you know, let's say we are visited.
Yes.
First thing people are going to say, well, why weren't we prepared? Why would we have somebody waiting at the door?
Why didn't we have someone that that had an office we could go to?
Well, that's absolutely right. And so she is an outer space liaison. Basically, her name is Maslin Othman. She's an astrophysicist, and she is the person, when they say, take me to your leader, that
she's the leader.
She is the leader that will communicate with them.
Declassified U.S. government documents and witness testimony from former or retired U.S. military personnel confirm beyond any doubt the reality of ongoing UFO incursions at nuclear weapons sites. When I say UFO, the witnesses have described these craft as disc-shaped or cylindrical-shaped or spherical. These objects are capable of both hovering and high-velocity flight, usually completely silently. Over the past 37 years, I have personally located and interviewed more than 120 of these former or retired military personnel, all of whom report UFO incidents at one or more of the following locations: nuclear missile sites, nuclear weapons storage areas, and nuclear weapons test sites in Nevada and the Pacific during the era of atomic atmospheric testing.
Sometime in the evening hours on March 24th, I received a call from one of my topside guards, the flight security controller, stating that they had been observing strange lights in the sky making odd maneuvers and wanted to report it. I thought it was kind of a strange report, but I took it seriously. You have to understand we were protecting nuclear weapons, and the reports we generally got were very professional. At any rate, I kind of dismissed the call. He called back about 5 minutes later. This time he was screaming into the phone saying they're looking at an object, a red glowing object hovering just above our front gate.
Describe what they look like.
I could, but it would probably take a whole lot of time. The reason I state that, when I got out in 1989, we had cataloged 57 different species. You have individuals that look very much like you and myself that could walk among us and you wouldn't even notice the difference, except for some of the things that they might be able to go ahead, even in a dark room, and touch an object and go ahead and identify what color that object might be. They would have a heightened sense of smell, sight, hearing. The situation is that you have various types of what we normally call grays. We didn't call them grays in the military, but you had at least 3 types of the grays. You had some that were much taller than we were. The unique thing that I'd like to point out for the most part is that the entities that we did catalog were in fact humanoid. Now this created a situation where the scientific community was trying to figure out why that would be the case, because you would expect that if life evolved on other planets that they would take on some type of other being, so to speak, not necessarily look humanoid or be bipedal such as we are. But apparently we got quite a few of the species out there that are humanoid in appearance. And that creates a question that yet has to be answered by science.
This Sumerian cylinder seal from a Berlin museum is astonishing for several reasons. First, it depicts our solar system with the sun at the center and the planets arrayed around it. A fact not known to European science till around 300 years ago. It also shows the planet Pluto, which we didn't discover till 1930. And amazingly, there's another planet, which the Sumerians called Nibiru, and believed that it was from where the Anunnaki, or celestial giants, came from.
If you look at the three figures depicted here, they all look more or less the same size. But if you bear in mind that this figure of the deity, that he is seated, and you add from the knee to the hip to his size, you will realize that he is about 10 feet tall, a giant, one of those who from heaven to earth came.
The Maya and Incas of South America believed a race of giants existed on Earth before the Great Flood. So did many other ancient civilizations. Some took them for gods, others left likenesses of them in stone or wrote about them in their histories. The Greeks and Romans told of blood falling from heaven and landing in the lap of the earth goddess Gaia, who gave birth to the Titans, a race of fearsome giants.
Certainly have been sightings in ancient that may be embraced by ancient mythology. The idea that the modern sightings might have a relationship with the ancient Nephilim events of the Old Testament is conjecture on the part of some of us as scholars, but I think it would seem to be consistent with the remarks of Jesus himself. As Jesus himself said that as we get to the end times, he says, as the days of Noah were, so shall the days of the Son of Man be. Now that, what he might mean by that is simply that it was business as usual until the judgment came, and that's what many scholars would infer. But there are many scholars that believe the text implies even more than that. In order to understand what Jesus meant, we need to understand what the days of Noah were like. And clearly the 6th chapter of Genesis demonstrates that the purpose of the flood of Noah was to deal with what was in effect a gene pool problem.
Baalbek in particular is a very good example. That has the trilithon. Those are the largest stones in the world ever used for construction. They're so large we don't even know their actual weight. Those stones were somehow quarried, moved 5 miles, lifted 25-30 feet in the air, and placed together so closely that you can't fit a razor blade or a piece of paper in between them. We have no idea how they did it. We don't have a crane in the world that can lift weights anywhere near what those things are.
No one knows for sure, but according to Arab tradition, the earliest temples were built here after the Great Flood by a tribe of giants for the biblical king Nimrod.
To do that, they could deploy millions of mirrors in space, encircling the whole sun and feeding the power to one single collection point. Such power might make it possible to warp the very fabric of space and create a portal called a wormhole. This portal would act like a shortcut, allowing them to travel huge distances in the blink of an eye. Like us, they would probably have evolved from a species used to exploiting whatever it can.
So if aliens ever visit us, I think the outcome would be much as when Christopher Columbus first landed in America, which didn't turn out very well for the Native Americans. So the journey that started with the search for water has led us to far-off worlds that I think probably do exist. In such a massive place as the cosmos, we only had to look at ourselves for proof that extremely unlikely things can and do happen all the time. Let's just hope that if aliens do find us, they'll come in peace.
Nightline continues from New York City with Martin Bashir.
For more than 2 decades, the archives collected dust hidden from the public by the British government. Some 4,500 pages of documents detailing UFO eyewitness accounts that defense officials recorded and in some cases investigated. But today, light was shone in a dark place when a portion of that archive was declassified. So, did these documents answer the question, are we really alone? Nick Watt now reports.
Lieutenant Milton Torres was ordered to keep silent about what happened. Today, we learned the details. May 20th, 1957, he scrambled his Sabre jet from a base in England with orders to arm all weapons and fire on sight. Before he could fire, the erratic, bright blip on his radar simply disappeared. April 1991, an Italian airline pilot approaching Heathrow saw a craft he described as light brown, similar to a missile. He shouted to his co-pilot, "Look out, look out!" The British government investigated this near miss, but came up with nothing.
There are some cases, and it's about 5%, that can't be explained. They are genuine unknowns.
Nick Pope worked for Britain's Ministry of Defence. His job to investigate UFO sightings.
Overleaf, we have a sketch. Extremely interesting. People are taken seriously, people are listened to, people are believed, and people are prepared to investigate.
11,000 UFO sightings have been reported in Britain since 1959. Records of every one are kept here in the vast National Archive. Only now are the details being revealed.
Conspiracy theories have already started, suggesting, for example, that this is a whitewash, that this is disinformation.
I don't think the ministry has revealed everything by any means. The facts are too disturbing for the majority of the populace. Some of them actually have bases and have had bases on planet Earth for maybe thousands of years.
Any day now, the most contentious file of them all will be opened. The file on Rendlesham Forest, Britain's equivalent of Roswell.
I have no explanation for the Rendlesham Forest incident.
It was Christmas night, 1980. Guards at 2 US Air Force bases in eastern England thought they saw a plane crash in these woods. They investigated and reported a strange glowing object, metallic in appearance. It illuminated the entire forest. The object was hovering or on legs.
There's no doubt about it. There's some type of strange flashing red light ahead.
2 nights later, the lights returned.
Weird.
Lieutenant Colonel Charles Holt recorded this as he walked through the dark forest.
Bill, it's coming this way. It is definitely coming this way. There's no doubt about it. This is weird. Bill, there's definitely two lights. One light to the front and one light to the left. Keep the flashlights off. There's something very, very strange.
Holt's men recorded high radiation levels here at the alleged landing site.
It suggests that this object, whatever it was unusual in nature. Something was physically present in that clearing.
Do you see aliens?
Yes, we have done so, yes. When we've been in Blair Witch...
Brenda Butler and her fellow UFO enthusiasts believe Rendlesham Forest is still an alien destination.
When they come in a load of mist, like just a whole cloud of mist, and you can actually see them standing in the mist.
These are the photographs, but Brenda rarely snaps the aliens she meets.
And they've said to us, you know, that they don't like photographs. They don't like the flash.
Right. Because, I mean, if aliens really do want to make contact with our leaders, why would they chat to Brenda in a remote forest?
Ridicule is the principal tool used to discredit the subject.
But, says Good, the time has come. The policy of our governments has changed, and releasing these files is key.
The official agenda is, I've been told, on both sides of the Atlantic, is that gradual disclosure has to be the way, and my instinct tells me that disclosure process has begun.
Something's being tracked, flew off in the direction of Basildon.
We're being primed, and when we're deemed ready to handle the unsettling truth of aliens among us, then all will be revealed. Have we been attacked?
I think there is a conflict situation.
Very noisy. Interesting.
I'm Nick Watt for Nightline in London.
Interesting indeed. Our thanks to Nick Watt.
More UFO sightings than ever before. Documents released under the Freedom of Information Act show there have been 231 unidentified flying objects reported to the Ministry of Defence in the first 6 months of this year. That compares to a total of 285 in the whole of last year. The sightings range from Chinese lanterns that are easily explained and dismissed to complex craft spotted by pilots, sparking investigation from the Ministry of Defence.
But the real question here that we've been addressing is, have we been visited? Are we, since we are now a spacefaring civilization, having only gone to our own moon, but have our visitors, the aliens, have they come to us? And all the evidence says yes.
So what is it that you want to see the Obama administration release? What is it specifically? What do you think is there that we need to see?
Well, the other nations, and this has been a global phenomenon, other nations and just in recent history, the Belgian nation, the French, the Brazilians, the Mexicans, the Argentines, all of their files have been opened up, and there's no reason in the world why the U.S. files, the leading nation in the world in this period, should have been reticent in opening ours too, except special interest groups.
So Edgar, but let me ask you, I mean, for all the stories that have leaked over all the years, I mean, and there's always somebody somewhere that's going to leak something, and if there was really something there, don't you think by now somebody would have said something?
Oh, it has. People have been saying it all along. But for example, just the explanation to the Roswell incident has changed every few years, and a new story comes out. If it were really that simple, if it weren't what it really was, you wouldn't need all of these various stories coming out. And so the attempt to cover this up and to disguise the issue and create misinformation and disinformation is very well recorded. And the documentation from very fine researchers like Dr. Robert Wood and his son Ryan, who've investigated all of the early documents, all point to the same story. Hey, we're not alone here when we've been visited.
Well, Edgar Mitchell, I'll tell you what, it fascinates all of us. We'll stay on it, and please let us know if you're able to dig a little deeper and bring us a scoop. Edgar Mitchell, great to see you.
Thank you.
A UFO hovers over one of the holiest sites in Islam, the Dome of the Rock on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, the spot where the Prophet Muhammad ascended to heaven, built on top of a site sacred to Judaism. An American woman takes it all in her stride, seen it all before.
We've seen them in Mississippi like this, but never like
Easily dismissed as a hoax until you see this. The same event, or so it seems, filmed from a different angle by someone else. The glowing ball of light dropping until it hangs just over the Dome of the Rock. These spectators a little more impressed.
Whoa!
The ball suddenly shooting off as if disturbed. If it's a hoax, it's very well done. We are not alone. Or are we?
A UFO in China's skies forced Zhoushan Airport to stop operations on July 7th. Outbound flights were grounded after the unidentified flying object was detected by a flight crew. The incident has captured the attention of Chinese media, and theories about the UFO's identity are burning up on the internet as well. They include everything from a hidden U.S. bomber to an elaborate man-made hoax. For now, the UFO continues to be a mystery. A spokesman from China's Civil Aviation Administration confirmed to ABC News that the matter is under investigation.
A man with more than 20 years flying experience under his wing, so to speak, saw something extraordinary which later made those headlines as he flew at 4,000 feet near Guernsey. And so did quite a few of his passengers, and so did the pilot of another aircraft that was flying nearby, flying over Sark. And Captain Bowyer is here now to tell his story. Thank you for coming in, and thank you for speaking up, because I know from private conversations I've had over the years with the commercial pilots, sometimes when I'm up in the cockpit with them, they do see things, and they tend not to report them because they don't want to be laughed at or have their careers jeopardised.
Exactly.
So why have you decided to speak out about this?
Well, I didn't actually decide to speak out at all. Actually, the press asked the company, which I work for, to would I mind doing an interview, and the company, being quite a forward-thinking firm, had no objection. In fact, pretty much actively encouraged it. So that's how it happened, really.
Well, how did the press get hold of it then? Did passengers?
I don't know. I really don't know.
You weren't the only person who saw
No,
this phenomenon,
that's right.
were you? There
No.
were some passengers who saw it, and
Yeah.
also another pilot.
Yes.
Simultaneously. Well, look, we've got an artist's impression that we knocked up here this afternoon on our computer paint box. Is that kind of what you saw? Is that a reasonable...
No.
Oh, well, which the best we did.
Be honest, yeah.
Well, hold that picture.
Well, it's pretty good.
You describe it to us.
Well, it was a brilliant yellow object. The brightness you've got there, about 2/3 from left to right, it was a graphite grey section. If you want to call it a fuselage, we don't know yet what it was. We're looking into it.
And how big was it?
Difficult to say once again, but I saw it from 50 miles away. So any object from 50 miles away must have been fairly enormous.
What, about a mile long?
It's possible, yeah.
Did it move at all?
It probably didn't move, but I had the great opportunity the other day from Jersey Air Traffic Control visiting their radar room, and some interesting traces, let's put it that way, from the radar
Really?
indicate that there's a possibility that they did pick up on, from both Guernsey and Jersey radar, traces, spurious traces they call, for around about 55 minutes.
How long did you see it for?
I saw it in total for 12 minutes.
Can I show you a picture? This is, I'm sure you've seen this picture. It's of lenticular clouds, a very rare but known formation. This was taken some years ago. Could it have been something like that? Could it have been some very, very strangely formed cloud, do you think?
No. Well, I think highly unlikely. I've seen lots
like?
of lenticularis in my time, but just doesn't look like a cloud.
Well, you've seen a lot of clouds over the last
I also
few
had
years.
the opportunity of looking at this, or these objects, there were two of them, through binoculars, 10 times magnification, and in my view, a very definite object inside controlled airspace, which shouldn't have been there.
What happened? Did you simply lose contact with it? Did it disappear?
Well, I was landing. There was a general flight from Southampton going to Alderney, and the only reason I lost sight of it was because I descended through a haze layer, which is fairly common in that area. And having descended through the haze layer, couldn't see it anymore. But it's almost certainly still there.
Did the other pilot who was flying over Sark, the island of Sark, did he report it in exactly the same terms?
Yes, because it was sighted, or they were sighted inside controlled airspace. The pilot's under a legal obligation, and I suspect this is where the press
stories come from.
And he's filed a report exactly the same as I have.
Well, let's show you a couple of pictures from the UFO file books. These are genuine UFOs in the sense that no one's ever been able to explain what they are, but they happen. They're not fakes.
Well, that's
over New Mexico.
That's very similar to the sort of thing that I saw. Yeah,
well, and
my passengers.
That was famously
I haven't seen
taken over New Mexico in 1957, and it's not a cloud. That much we do know. I don't know what it is, but it's not a cloud.
Not a cloud. Analysis showed that it wasn't a cloud, but they don't know what it was, hence UFO. This is one from Russia in 1989. Again, analysis shows it's a genuine object. It's not a cloud. There is a cloud above it, a faint one, but that object is not a cloud. Again, is that something?
Well, I'd say the object I saw was a very brilliant yellow
much brighter
colour.
than that.
Yeah, much brighter. It's emitting light.
Good. It was emitting. You think it was emitting light?
Well, there was cloud above it and all the way down to Guernsey. And,
so it couldn't have been reflecting sunlight.
Well, that was what I first thought before I looked at it through the binoculars. That there's a lot of vineries called greenhouses in Guernsey, and the sun may have been reflecting from one of these vineries to the aircraft. You often see them in France as well on the way down to the Channel Islands, and because the aircraft moves position and the reflections are fixed in place, they often disappear. They always disappear. This one didn't disappear; it just stayed stationary.
If you had to take an instinctive guess, and I'm saying it's guess, so I'm not asking for professionals, because how could you possibly know? Would you say that it was something of this planet or something from outer space?
Extremely difficult. I mean, I think a few years ago you interviewed Dr. David Clark on a very similar sort of thing.
You did, yeah.
About 4 years ago. I spoke to him today. He's in charge of a team that's looking into this at the moment. I have been asked a question by the press, and my simple answer was, I don't think it's from around here. I can't speculate any further than that. But there is some information which is now being looked at, and hopefully better come back one day and give you an answer to this. But at the moment, it's an unknown.
When you fly now, I mean, do you have a sort of slightly heightened awareness of what may be going on around you?
I think, yes, definitely. Yeah, it's not the first object I've seen personally, and I've spoken to a lot of other commercial pilots since this has happened, and they've said on the quiet, come round the corner, I want to tell you about what I saw.
Absolutely,
and I think what's going to happen now, this may have opened the can, and I think what all professional pilots out there ought to be looking at is actually reporting everything they see and actually getting it itemised and written into the CAA, and then perhaps we will find
Well, I have to say, the unofficial first-hand accounts I've, as I say, had from professional pilots, many of them with as much experience as you have, and they're not putting me on, are extraordinary. Some things that some guys have seen. Some see nothing in their entire career. We interviewed a British Airways pilot who also came out in the 1960s. He saw a silver disc, didn't he? He picked it up on his radar. It was picked up on ground radar over the Bay of Biscay. Pretty big, and it travelled at immense speed, way faster than the speed of sound, and disappeared under his right wing. And it was a round silver disc, like they're supposed to be. Extraordinary.
Well, this object looked like a CD disc on edge, if you like, but very sharp and extremely well defined.
Well, thank you very much for coming in and describing it to us. That's fascinating. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Only 12 men have ever walked on the moon, and the man who did it the second time anyone walked on the moon was Buzz Aldrin. He was part of the first mission that got there. The NASA astronaut on Apollo 11. He's here with a model of Apollo 11. He was with the first pair with Neil Armstrong, of course. And Buzz, the panel remains so that they might want to pop something at him. But Buzz, what's your connection with this program? What did you see?
What did I see? Well, we
the first day out, maybe 6 hours after launch, we were scheduled to make a mid-course correction. And I'd like to show you a few things in this rocket just to point out the condition that we were in. During launch, this boost protective cover comes off, hopefully not with the command module attached. And then the first stage drops off, the second stage drops off. Unfortunately, I can't take this apart, but there's the third stage, and inside is the lunar module, and this is the command and service module. Once, after going an orbit and a half around the Earth, we fire for 5 minutes this engine here, and we head toward the moon. Now, shortly after that, we separate the command and service module, and it turns around like this, and it docks with the lunar module. I'm going to have to be pretty ambidextrous.
Are we getting to a UFO?
We're getting to that, yes.
I only ask in view of time.
I know.
This is fascinating.
You don't want me to be the jury of all these people.
No, I don't.
All right. Now, notice these 3 and 4 panels. Whenever the command module separates and turns around, those panels go off in 4 different directions. The rocket, now we're separated from the rocket, and the spacecraft, the lunar module and the command module, are heading toward the moon. Now, we orient perpendicular to the plane of the sun, the Earth, and the moon, and rotate slowly like this. And we can look out these windows and see the Earth drift by and see the moon drift by.
What did you see?
And I saw a light out there. Okay? This is after we had witnessed the upper stage rocket next to us make an evasive maneuver to miss the moon. Later missions had crashed into the moon so that we could determine the seismic effect of crashing into the moon.
So you saw a light.
So we saw a light, and we thought, wonder what that is. You know, there are a lot of lights out there when you're not looking in the direction of the sun. There are a lot of stars, and they're all fixed relative to each other. Now, one of them starts moving, or it's moving, and we know that that's another object. It's not a star.
Stars don't move.
Well, they move, but they're so damn far away that we're not going to...
Hold on, how long did it follow you?
Exactly, that's why I started to do this. Now, we know that if we were to say, Houston, we got a light out the window, it's going along with us, heading for the moon, a lot of these guys are going to go ape, you know? and it's really going to endanger the mission and occupy a lot of our time trying to explain what's going on.
All right.
So we very shrewdly, Neil said, Houston, where is the upper stage? And they didn't know right away, but they said, we'll check with the guys in the back room. The guys in the back room in 10 minutes came back and said it's 6,000 miles away. Oops. Well, we figured that's not what we're looking at. So we started thinking a little bit more about these 4 panels, and I'd seen a graph where it showed the separation distance that was calculated before liftoff, before the whole mission went, of where these panels would be in case the spacecraft made some maneuver, and they guaranteed there'd be no contact.
Hold it right there. You got me held. I'm going to hold Buzz. We're going to add the governor. We'll figure it all out how to do it. And close with all of them, because I'm suddenly involved in this. What the hell was that? What did you see?
What did I see during the flight?
Yeah,
we saw one of the 4 panels to 99.999. And these are 3 guys who have flown in space twice and have looked out at the stars and all sorts of things. So belief, yes, we certainly saw something. We could see, look at it in a second. I know, it was one of the panels, yeah.
So that's it.
One of the major reasons that ufology hasn't been properly recognized by the scientific and journalistic community have been the staunch efforts of the astronomical community coupled with the SETI community to say there's life out there, but they ain't coming here. And therefore this UFO stuff is nonsense. They've been saying that for a long time. They won't look at the UFO evidence, but they have their own agenda to point out to us. they don't often tell you the underlying assumptions. This should not be surprising. In the newest book that John mentioned, we have a whole chapter on space, aviation. There are 14 chapters. Kathleen and I each did 7. And the point is that smart people have been saying basically stupid things for a long time. And astronomers have taken the lead. And, you know, I'll let a psychologist or a psychiatrist figure out why. The resistance to the new, the different. But before I get into that, let me give my usual two-minute introduction to where I stand, so there'll be no question about the position that I hold. After 52 years of study and investigation, I'm convinced that the evidence is overwhelming that Earth is being visited by intelligently controlled extraterrestrial spacecraft. In other words, some UFOs are alien spacecraft. Most are not. I don't care about them. Most isotopes aren't fissionable. So what? You want to build a reactor, use the one that is. Secondly, we're dealing with a cosmic Watergate, meaning some few people within governments around the world have known since at least July 1947, when bodies and vehicles were recovered in New Mexico, that indeed some UFOs are alien spacecraft. They didn't say the government knows, some few people within government. The third conclusion is, despite the rantings of the noisy negativists, that there are no good arguments against the first two. Not that people haven't tried, but none of them stand up when compared to the evidence. And finally, fourth, we're dealing with the biggest story of the millennium. I'm not a mollycoddler. I don't walk gently into that big night. Now, you put all that together, we're talking about the biggest story. I say millennium because if I said 2, then I'd get into religious arguments, and I don't want to get into those. Not here now. Okay. Now, one would think, therefore, that people interested in outer space would be in the forefront of those looking at the UFO evidence. And at one time, people like Dr. J. Allen Hynek, an astronomer after all, Air Force consultant on Project Blue Book for over 20 years, author of an excellent book, The UFO Experience. You'd think that astronomers today would naturally refer you to Allen's book. No such luck. Instead, we get told that there is no evidence.
Look at these pictures. This UFO that you see right there was witnessed by hundreds of people back in 2006. This was over Chicago's O'Hare Airport. Pilots witnessed it, military officials witnessed it, and the FAA admits it was on their radar. The author, who has spent 10 years interviewing government officials who saw this strange sighting, is here to tell us about it next.
All right, here it is, my favorite segment of the morning. Real or just a hoax? The question comes up whenever UFOs are mentioned, but now some new support that may surprise you. Tomorrow, former military personnel are speaking out for the first time on camera about their personal experiences with UFOs in Washington, D.C. Investigative journalist Leslie Kane has been studying this for years. She's the author of the new book, UFOs, Generals, Pilots, and Government Officials Go on the Record. She's here to talk about it. Leslie, great to see you this morning.
Great to see you, Clayton.
So you spent 10 years working on this book. You have 5 different military generals that you've interviewed in this book. How did you manage to pull all this together?
Well, I mean, as you said, I've spent a long time working on it. I've published lots of stories on it in mainstream media, and over the years I started to reach out to some of these very high-level contacts, which you said are generals and military people from around the world, government officials who have investigated this, and just made it a point to get the most official and the highest level data that I could about the subject.
What I love about your book is you don't put any stories in the book that could be argued with. You call yourself a UFO skeptic. So none of the stories in the book, you say, can be argued with.
I agree with you. I mean, the evidence is irrefutable for some kind of physical phenomenon, and it's well documented in the book through multiple witnesses, radar, ground traces that are left by things that land,
and airline pilots,
right.
Officials, and so forth. Let's start with one, actually. This was at Chicago O'Hare Airport in 2006. This was witnessed by dozens of people there at O'Hare, and pilots as well. Tell us what happened in this one that ended up shocking a lot of people.
Absolutely. There was a disc that was hovering right over the United Airlines terminal. A round, metallic-looking disc that lots of people saw, as you said. It hovered there for maybe 5 minutes minimum and suddenly shot straight up through the clouds above it. There was a cloud bank above it and left this absolutely crisp hole in the clouds. People underneath could look up and see the blue through the cloud. So that's basically what happened. A lot of people saw it. None of the witnesses would go on the record because they're worried about ridicule, unfortunately.
Yeah, the pilots and people were worried about losing their job as well. Some other people in Phoenix were worried about losing their jobs for going on the record about the Phoenix Lights. This is one of the most famous UFO encounters ever. And take a look at this video. Thousands of people witnessed this over Phoenix. In fact, you in the book interviewed the governor of Arizona at the time, Fife Symington, about this, right?
Absolutely. Not at the time, but years later, and he is, in fact, probably one of the most famous witnesses because, as you said, he, too, was afraid of ridicule. While he was governor, he saw this object that lots of other people saw, but didn't say anything about it for 10 years. 10 years later, he decided that it was time to make amends to the people that he had withheld this information. It was very important to the people of Arizona that they know that he was one of the people that saw it as well.
And he's featured in the book. Also in the book is McMinnville, Oregon. This one goes back to 1950, and I think this is fascinating. Way before Photoshop. Take a look at this photo. What are we seeing here?
Yeah, this was taken like with a brownie camera. A farmer and his wife were just out on the farm in the middle of nowhere. They saw this disc hovering overhead, ran in and got their camera, took two very, very incredible photographs that have been well documented and studied by laboratories for decades.
Well, I would encourage everyone to pick up this book. If you're sitting there as a skeptic, read it from beginning to end and then make your decisions about it. Leslie Kane, the book is great. It's called UFOs. It is out now. Clueless.
Northern Kenya, they have found a boy, the skeleton of what is believed to be one of our oldest ancestors.
By using carbon dating on that skeleton and others, scientists have formed a consensus about when the first humanoids evolved. But something extraordinary happened 30,000 years ago. After millions of years of slow evolution, humans began a rapid advance from cave painters to sophisticated pyramid builders.
You don't have pyramids, and you don't have basket weaving, and you don't have metallurgy, and you don't have all of these anomalies just popping out of the blue. We have whole mathematical concepts with no antecedent, stages, which we know must have existed.
People in American Fork and Highland reported some strange happenings in last night's sky.
They did, and they want to know what was hovering over that area between 7:15 and 7:30 last night. ABC4's Barb Smith is taking action to find out what it was, Barb.
Robert and Karen, they tell us that they saw lights, but those lights were not from an airplane or a helicopter, and these lights dropped something as they hung low over the sky.
I don't believe in extraterrestrials.
Lynette Chittister doesn't believe in close encounters. Neither does Mike Galbraith.
And when people tell me this, I think, oh, you're just seeing things or people are making things up.
But last night, both saw something in the sky that they can't explain. Mike was in the Air Force and says the lights hovering in the sky were unlike any he had seen. He was outside a shopping center in American Fork, grabbed his cell phone, and took this video.
But I looked up and there was 3 red lights, and then they started dropping. It looked like flares or something bright was dropping straight down.
Lynette saw it too at her home in Highland.
And I noticed over the roof of the garage a red light and a white light. And the red light isn't flashing, like an airplane light does. That's what drew my attention to it.
She says soon there were 3.
And out of the red light comes like a firework, the phosphorescent silver. It's coming down out of it, and I thought, okay, I've never seen that before.
Both say the objects were flying slowly, almost hovering, and were in formation.
And they looked like they were flying in formation perfectly together. And then whatever was dropping looked like it was burning real bright.
But Galbraith says the lights were without sound and did not belong to any plane or helicopter he was familiar with from his military experience. And he says what was being dropped were not flares.
They usually shoot out the sides or they shoot down, and there's a lot of them. And you could definitely hear them.
Lynette's husband once manufactured military flares. He agreed what was being seen was not a military exercise. But what was it?
Winston Churchill may have been best known as a wartime hero, but it seems that he also took a keen interest in strange objects in the sky. It's now emerged that the MOD once investigated a claim that he may have covered up a UFO sighting during World War II out of concerns for public reaction. Documents just published by the National Archives describe a mysterious incident when an RAF crew spotted an unexplained object hovering by their aircraft. Churchill found this so worrying that he classified the information for the next 50 years.
If the full facts were released, I think Churchill was close to it. I'm not sure about mass panic, but I do think people would be disturbed. I can say that because there are certain unpleasant and alarming aspects to this subject.
The MOD has released thousands of files on UFOs in recent years. Most are reported sightings by members of the public, which the MOD says can be easily explained. But this particular incident remains unsolved.
We also know that lots of pilots saw mysterious objects during the Second World War on bombing raids. People have probably heard of the term Foo Fighters, and these were what pilots described as UFOs before the phrase flying saucer or UFO was even heard of. So I think it's quite possible that maybe Winston Churchill really was involved in this incident.
Welcome back. Well, it was billed as bigger than big, an announcement by NASA today that would have something to do with other life forms, and that set off all kinds of speculation. But when it was revealed today, we didn't learn about the existence of little green men. Instead, it was about the discovery of something almost as strange. When news spread that NASA was going to announce something big today about new life forms, well, the blogosphere lit up. Finally, proof of extraterrestrials, many surmised, and so believers waited with bated breath. Then this afternoon came the big announcement.
We've cracked open the door to what's possible for life elsewhere in the universe.
Yes, indeed, something strange had been found here in this quiet corner of Mono County, California. And while it was proof of a different kind of life,
what I've presented to you today is a microbe doing something different than life as we knew it.
no aliens were marched forth as evidence. But what was offered is still blockbuster news. Science had long held that 6 elements were necessary for life. One of them was phosphorus.
These light orange balls disappear.
But this bacteria can live without phosphorus, growing with arsenic instead, and that literally opens a world of possibility.
There could be all kinds of different types of life that no one's ever thought of, and this experiment, this demonstration, changes the way we look at things.
Let's remember that when Jesus briefed 4 disciples in his confidential briefing on his second coming, he opened his discussion and he closed his discussion with the urgent admonition, let no man deceive you. We need to understand that the characteristic of the period that we're being plunged into is one of deceit, one of very clever misguidance by the enemy. We do have an enemy. He's very knowledgeable, very resourceful. And we are moving into open spiritual warfare. We're used to conflicts in countries about politics, different views. Today, there's a fundamental war going on in worldviews.